about Brown IT guys. What is your favorite TV show? What is your favorite TV show on, let's say, Netflix?
On Netflix.
Yeah.
Black Mirror, maybe?
Ooh, that's intense.
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
intense.
It
I was
is.
gonna say, I was like, because you've been in a lot of skits. That's why I was like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe it's like a comedic thing, but
I do love Friends, but then it's like the
mm,
1990s stuff. Who cares about that anymore?
nine. Really? It's
Friends is fun.
classic.
Yeah, right? It's
It's
from the 90s,
classic.
so yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely one of the classic ones. Actually, the one I've been getting into is IT Crowd. It is absolutely
Oh, I love that too.
yeah. I'm surprised you
Oh
didn't
my
say
God.
it. I was like, but it's not like This Is You, but it's kind
Have you
of
tried turning it on and off again?
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I know. And then done. Oh yeah. But I really like that show, especially since I've watched it probably 3 times. After I
Mhm.
end it, I like restart just because it's so
Oh yeah,
entertaining and there's all these little British jokes too. Like
yeah.
it's
I've seen it twice now on Netflix. It's
do you
fun.
like that humor?
I do like that
The
humor. Yeah,
dry and
yeah.
awkward humor.
The nerds. Yeah, totally.
Oh, the nerds. I know. We're talking about IT Crowd. Just I don't know if you heard previously, but Melby is in the theater. So what I'm gonna do afterwards, if you don't mind, can I send these folks some of the skits that you've been part of?
Totally. Yeah. Please.
Awesome. I have them just so you guys are aware, and I'll tag them after this interview.
Cool.
We are a bit behind, and I do want to wait for folks to trickle in.
Mhm.
Really quickly, you've talked about your time in theater. How do you feel like theater has helped you through your career? I know this is a hobby of yours, but
Yeah. I think what helped me with that is like the stage fright that comes along with a lot of people when you have to present something to a larger crowd, meeting somebody who's a stranger to you, right? Because most of these acting gigs that I go to, you are paired up with like a lot of other strangers, and you're sitting around. Most of the glamorous acting gigs are that you're waiting around the whole time for them to set up the camera, the right shots, all that sort of stuff. So you got to go socialize with the rest of the people. So that way, I think it has made it easier for me to kind of like, strike up a conversation with somebody who's a stranger. That has translated to me being able to go, make relationship across the aisle when it comes to work. I think that's how I kind of see acting has kind of helped me. And also, it's helped me become a better actor every day in the morning. I just come and stare at the computer monitor, and everybody thinks I'm working, but I'm not.
oh
You-
my gosh, you're you're an actor from when you're awake.
yeah, I
I
just,
love
I
it.
just, I just do what I do in acting gigs. I just stare at the monitor, and everybody thinks I'm working.
And you have to pretend to type too.
Right, right, right. Click,
There
click,
you
click,
go.
click, click.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. And click, click, click from your mouse. So I've seen people trickle in. Maybe what we'll do is we'll get started knowing we have a pretty packed agenda. I have a lot of
Mhm.
questions for him since he's quite critical in the hiring process. Noting that you probably didn't hear Melby's intro, I'm going to ask him to introduce himself again, if that's okay with you, Melby.
Totally. So I am Melby Matthew. I am currently an engineering manager here in LinkedIn in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am in the engineering space, so obviously in the tech world with a lot of other people. Um, and currently, or in my past 3 jobs, I've hired people, and currently I'm also trying to hire people on my team in the tech space, engineers. Yeah, that's a quick intro about me. Anything more you would like to know?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, you briefly told me about tell me about yourself, which you did. You had several positions before this, and then I actually have some questions maybe after I start framing today's session.
Hmm.
So, guys, I see you guys trickling in, but for folks who are already here, you probably know the drill. Um, One of the things that I like starting off with is framing today's discussion. So before I start, 3 mandated disclaimers I want to start off with. First, advice is endorsed by the individual and not by the company. So this is not a reflection of everyone with LinkedIn and even not within, future or current of LinkedIn. Second, I do not tolerate any personal attacks through the chat. Don't see this as here Melby's here to critique you, and it's supposed to be constructive. We're here to give you constructive feedback that you might not otherwise get in a more critical environment when you're actually in the job seeking process. Third, and it's not really a disclaimer, but let me tell you a bit about why Melby was chosen for the live interview. Melby has been hiring and is hiring for his team. So it's a really great time to get an insider's view of how Melby wants to build his team, his expectations for the roles he's hired, and also maybe get an insider's perspective to how he sees resumes, the whole hiring process. And note, Melby is a software engineering manager. He is not HR, so he does not necessarily work with the ATS system, but there might be times he would touch upon it. It depends on each individual hiring manager situation. So, with that, I'm actually going to pass it back to Melby. I have one question for you. Tell me about the role that you're hiring for. And I'll start with that, and then I have a follow on question.
Totally. So currently, I am hiring for a senior software engineer to come join the settings team in LinkedIn. And we are specifically looking for about 4 to 5 years of experience, making you kind of like a senior engineer. We have a few like junior engineers on the team, so having a senior engineer to kind of mentor the rest of the team is important. That's why we're looking for a senior engineer specifically. And skill wise or technology skill wise, we use Java. Again, I'm not specifically looking for like a Java, hey, have you ever done Java? But any programming experience obviously helps. And something with the object oriented programming principle. So I always think that Java to C# to C++, it's all the same. As long as you know one, it's okay. So somebody with like programming experience in the object-oriented programming space, a little bit of like web application experience. So when it comes to engineers, there's like the web engineers versus the mobile engineers versus the machine learning data science engineers. So I'm specifically looking for like a web engineer who's had that full stack web experience, built APIs, built websites. What else is there? Yeah, and about 5 years of experience, and then worked on some good challenges in the previous jobs. That's it.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for giving that perspective as to what you're hiring for currently. Can you help me understand the difference now that you're managing a team? What's the
Mhm.
difference from your perspective between a junior, senior, and maybe I don't know if you have a principal type role, but all three of those roles, how do they differ amongst each other?
Absolutely. And this definition kind of changes based on what company you kind of work for. So every company has got like this leveling guide that they talk about as to, hey, this is what we expect of a junior engineer. This is what we expect of a senior engineer. This is what we expect of a principal engineer. So it kind of changes based on the company that you're working for. But overall, if I were to kind of look at it from a 10,000 feet, it would be like a junior engineer is very much kind of fresh, right? You have a lot of motivation, but not a ton of like actual hands-on experience of working in a larger team and company. So somebody on the intern, fresh out of college, is what I kind of think as like a junior engineer, software engineer sort of a person. The senior engineer, so that person's like hungry for things, right? They're like very motivated, passionate to learn things and ask the right questions, essentially. So that's what I kind of take as like a junior engineer. But they are able to kind of take a task on themselves, finish it with some help from some of the senior engineers on the team. When it comes to the senior engineers, they're a little bit more experience. They've seen problems. They have ideas of their own to solve problems. They see processes that can be changed to make it more efficient. They have ideas and suggestions of that will impact the current team. Like if you're working on something where like, hey, we seem to constantly have some bugs. Can we do some automated tests in place? So constantly suggesting things that will improve the current team's working, essentially, is what I kind of see as like a senior engineer, also hand-holding some of the junior engineers, mentoring them and getting them to a better space. That's how I kind of see as a senior engineer. Then comes the principal staff engineer sort of role. They're more on the architecture side of things, and they build solutions that will impact multiple teams. So within LinkedIn, it could be like, hey, we're going to build a platform that's going to save settings, that's going to save the feeds the LinkedIn feeds page, or it's going to save LinkedIn, testing. We'll build a generic solution that will do testing for anything LinkedIn.com. It's not specific to settings team itself. So speaking directly from my team, settings is my team. So I think the principal's role is to make sure that they are building a system that is scalable across multiple different teams. You're not solving for just your team. At the same time, you're the person who goes and talks to all these different teams and understands what's happening in LinkedIn, so that we're not building duplicate things that other teams have sort of built. So you have that sort of like the extra responsibility to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the company, rather than just for the team. So that's like, the next step to a senior engineer is like you're taking it to the next level. That's how I kind of see the three splits.
Yeah.
And that naturally just comes through experience also.
Gotcha. Have you seen, I guess, junior engineers enter with a senior engineer mindset, or do you feel like that's quite rare from your experience?
Uh,
When they
I
come
haven't.
in and they start changing processes just because it's not working for them.
So I have seen really motivated junior engineers kind of come in, and feel like, hey, maybe we can do some changes here and there to make the process. But I don't think they're doing it in a way that is disrespectful. Like, I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but they don't do it in a sense that, oh, you guys are doing it all wrong. This is how it should be done. They're doing it in a very respectful way to say that, hey, why are we doing some of these steps? Maybe we can do this. So it's like more or less comes in as a suggestion. So they're already kind of like highly motivated and has some knowledge on how organized they work and all that sort of stuff to kind of make improvements. So that sort of suggestions is highly welcome. There are very rare, or I have seen it a few times where, after about a couple of years of experience in like a team, sometimes it feels like, hey, wait a minute, I've done a ton, right? In my team, it seems like I can go conquer the world. So sometimes we have this attribution where like a 2-year-old engineer might apply for a senior role, and they may not have seen enough, right? They may have just had one company experience or something like that, where they haven't had enough chance to kind of go through all the different problems. They may have gone through all the problems that may have happened in one company, but may not have always gone through all the problems that could potentially happen. Not all, but a lot more problems, essentially, just adding more to that experience, applying for some of the senior roles. And that may not, go as expected when it comes to some of the senior level expectations that other folks may have in other companies compared to what you're currently working in. So I've seen that sort of thing happen more frequently than somebody just saying, hey, even though I'm a junior engineer, I'm a senior. I've almost never seen that happen.
Yeah.
They do that very respectfully, but sometimes this happens where, with a few years of experience, you feel like, hey, I think I'm at the senior level. That may not be true. It could be true also. You never know.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks for coming, guys. Feel free to ask questions throughout the interview in the chat. By the way, if you post your favorite quote from this session, we'll get you a one-on-one with Melby. You can talk about career, how to navigate your career, talk about resumes, talk about mock interviews, but you have a committed 30-minute one-on-one with Melby. So be sure to take notes, write your favorite quote from this session, and post it on LinkedIn, the platform that Melby leads. Not settings, but on your feed.
LinkedIn, it's the most trusted social media platform.
Oh,
Product placement.
I love it. I love it. So what we'll do is let's get into the resume screening. That's what we're here to do. As Melby is going to screen share, guys, so in terms of the framework, we'll go through up to, I think we have 3 resumes for us today. We'll go through them. We'll take a look as to see how Melby reviews resumes. And then at the end, we'll not rank the resumes, but we'll give a go, no go decision on the resume at hand.
Cool.
Awesome.
So I think here is the first resume that I'm looking at.
Yep.
I think I like the very first thing that I look at when I see a resume is that if I have a LinkedIn link, I just click on it and go look at the LinkedIn first, because LinkedIn makes it, not just LinkedIn, right? Any sort of like web application makes it a little more accurate. There's more information that's out there, and it's easily more searchable and all that sort of stuff. So if I see a LinkedIn link, I think I'm just like, hey, let me just click that first and kind of go through that first.
Gotcha.
So that's the first thought that came in. So I think I like this sort of format, essentially name, email, phone number, LinkedIn profile. Sometimes if you're a developer, just add a GitHub link also. That's also another thing that I click on to see, hey, how active are you in that tech community world side of things?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that I kind of noticed was like this education that kind of shows up. It's great. But like I said, when I am looking for an engineer, I'm not saying, hey, I want to see computer science degree out there. I'm just essentially looking to see, hey, if you're a right fit for our team. I don't care if you have a bachelor's degree or not, or so in that case, I'm like, hey, the education can show up. It'll add. It's a plus one, but it can be lower in that stack of things. I'm essentially looking for the experience first or skills first. I don't know if they have right here. So the technical skills section, if that shows up on top, I think that's the most valuable thing, right?
Ooh.
For me, it's like, hey, have you worked on the web stack side of things, or have you worked on the machine learning things? What are some of those technologies that you've kind of worked with? So here, if I were to look at it, I'm like, yeah, C++, that's an object-oriented language. Java, perfect. Things like that kind of is aligns with what my team is currently also using. So it kind of times in well. So I think that would be one suggestion or recommendation that I would give, is that swap the education and the technical skills. Let the technical skills go up and on top. Looking at the experience here, disclosed April 2021 to present. A minor question that'll go through my mind is that, hey, why are they looking out for a job quickly or so soon? April 21 is just a few months ago. But again, when it comes to resumes, it's like it's a wider filter. Like you pass a lot more people through, and then the interviews is where you might hear some of that questions being asked. Shipped a website in React and Flask, which is good. We are looking for web application developers. Increased LinkedIn's engagement from 0 to 500 followers within 4 months. That's also good to kind of call out some of these metrics, but I don't know, 0 to 500. I don't know if that's a huge number enough, or do we want to just show percentages, sort of thing?
I feel like 0 to 500 would be a very odd percentage to
yeah
to include.
Infinity.
Yeah, but one of the things maybe is lacking, and maybe I'm giving points here and there. What about how they use React and Flask? Do you want more technicalities, or are you just, okay, well, I get it, you use this?
Yeah. I think I get it. I've seen this. Like Flask is the backend API side of things, React is the front end side of things. That's okay. Cool. I think that's absolutely fine. Optimize the website to streamline hiring managers, job seekers. Okay, so I think this is a good. I think this is a good starting line. Optimize the web design to streamline hiring managers, and it saved about 20 plus hours on introductory calls. I think this is where a percentage would make the most sense. Like, what was it before? When we say 20 plus hours, was it 24 hours for introductory calls? What is the savings that we got here? Maybe showing that as a percentage would actually make sense, because now all I know is that it saved 20 plus hours. What does that mean in the whole grand scheme of things?
Yeah.
Third one is manage 3 additional software developers and 2 designers to deliver against a 3-week launch timeline. I would probably take out the 3-week launch timeline, because it seems like a short duration of time. It's great that you did lead developers and designers on a tight schedule or something, or a tight timeline would probably make more sense than just saying 3 weeks, because it makes it was great until we saw 3 weeks. We were like, oh, that's small.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, now that you've read through the 3 bullet points, what are your perspectives of this candidate based off of that position alone?
Absolutely. So right now I'm feeling like, hey, this is a software engineer who has done some web application development. Seems like they have had some bit of leadership experience also. That is something that I'm also kind of looking for on my team also. It's like, hey, do you have ownership and leadership to kind of lead projects end to end sort of thing? So all that sort of stuff kind of makes me feel like, yeah, this is great, right? So far, whatever I read points me to like a software engineer.
Yeah.
For sure.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, so going towards the other experience of kind of a short interim term internship.
I think I like this area where, accelerating the validation process by 90%, which is great. Again, showing that sort of percentage improvements is always something that I personally love reading. Explore and leverage open source technology is great, saving 3 weeks in development process. Again, if we can quantify that to say X percentage of savings or something, that would
I
be.
feel like you have an inkling towards percentages versus
I don't know if it's,
absolutes.
yeah,
Is it?
so I think that's what it is. Yeah, probably. Because when we say, saving 3 weeks, what was it before is what
Mm,
I'm not able to understand, right? Was it always like 4 weeks that we
hmm
saved 3 weeks off of? Like, I think that's the perspective that I'm sort of kind of missing. I know that you saved 3 weeks, but at the same time, it's like in the whole thing, was that like a good,
Gotcha.
you know,
You're
I,
trying
I'm
to
not getting
get
the whole
like
picture.
yes, gotcha.
But again, just based on whatever I've read so far, yeah, like saving 200 hours annually, that is a quantifiable thing to me, right? That's a whole number. But you're saying in a year, this product is going to save us 200 hours. Great. So this 3 weeks in the development
Yeah.
process, it's like, what is that? Like, it doesn't really like, is it 3 weeks in the whole year? Is it 3 weeks per PR or pull request?
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's what the sort of missing process was. But other than that, implemented a client-side socket, connected to the existing server-side socket in a safe, secure fashion via Java. Perfect. And then there are a couple of these projects. So sometimes I skim through the project side of things because I know that those are projects that are done like school level or college level stuff. So sometimes I quickly skim through them. I see some of these percentages in there. Um, the Linux server sounds really interesting. So created a 4+ multi-threaded servers with load balancing in C to forward HTTP requests to a server with least stress. Great load balancer sort of thing. Something that I kind of noticed here was this extra bullet point kind of
Mm.
hovering there. Something to kind of keep in mind just to do a second, third pass.
That
Um,
might have been my fault. There was
okay,
something confidential there, and I like
got it.
deleted it. But
Okay,
okay, gotcha.
cool. No worries. Cool. And I think that's it on this. So I
Yeah.
guess the only other thing that I would say is to swap the technical skills with the education stuff there. I would rather see the technical skills up on top.
Yeah.
And also sometimes it's like bots that read these resumes too. So they will just scrape out the technical skills out of it and put it into like Hired or something anywhere you would upload. It'll scrape it out and pick it up. Just make it easier for the bot, I guess.
Awesome. So in summary, this seems to be a suitable resume. There's a lot of quantification, like there's a lot of numbers on here, which is really great. I know there's a
I
nuance between absolutes versus percentages. The overall, I think what Melby's looking for is the magnitude.
mhm.
How much is it relative to the overall scope? Is it three
Absolutely.
weeks in 52 weeks, which isn't that much, or 3 weeks saving from like 4 weeks, which is a 75% saving?
Mhm.
So he's looking for magnitude. I think overall, how do you feel about this resume? Obviously, this is probably not going to be for the senior level.
Yeah,
Would you?
I think this is what I would probably call as like one of those junior engineers who's
Mm-hmm.
like kind of new to the industry, but they have some experience to kind of showcase also. So I would probably say, yeah, this is probably a good junior engineer sort of a person that we can look for if we were hiring for somebody.
Yeah, awesome. Great. Let's move on to the second resume.
Cool. Move on to this one. Again, I think I see the education up on top, but the
Mm-hmm.
4.0 looks great. So keep it there. Uh, all right, going through the experience because that's the first thing that I normally kind of go through is the experience and the skills. So let's go through the experience because this person has obviously put the skills, the experience side of things out there first. So again, started in July, yeah, July 2021 to present. Benchmark release whole credit and assist in determining the appropriate sizing of letter of credit. Okay, research macroeconomic trends and outlooks to input into the firm's entire revenue forecasting model. That sounds pretty cool. Um, Simplifying the company comparable analysis by templating key financial and credit metrics across industries, slash to average trying credit internal all tenants, contractors, entity by 32%. I love the percentages for some reason. Um,
You
I
too.
think I think overall, right, just looking at the first 4 bullet points, the first three were like they're great statements, but again, as an engineer, sometimes I'm looking for some sort of like number validations to say, hey, this save the company something, right?
Hmm.
That's just my engineer in me kind of talking, but obviously I don't think this person is an engineering candidate to showcase some of those. So, but overall, I think you know, outlooks to input into the firm's entire revenue forecasting model. I think that sounds like a cool gig for somebody who's in the financial planning side of things. Um, so all those four things kind of give a good feeling. I think I love bullet points when it doesn't wrap around into multiple lines. Um,
Yeah.
so it's like you can read it quickly and finish it and go to the next one.
Ooh.
It's short bullet points essentially. So this resume seems to be a little more like, you know, a little cleaner to read essentially because the bullet points are short. It seems to be well organized and everything has got a little title section and it's clear as to what each of those sections meant. That looks great. Beyond angel networking. Uh, oh, something that I just quickly noticed for I don't know for what reason, but I don't know if this was supposed to be angle investors or angel
Ooh.
investors.
You're right.
Um, uh,
Probably the latter.
Okay. I would give it a pass. I mean, it could be autocorrect, whatever could have happened.
Hmm.
Never know. Contributed to acceptance rejection decisions for company screening. Okay. Contribute to acceptance rejection decision for. So I think because it's an angel investor company
Yeah.
or investment company or uh, venture capital analyst sort of role, you're one of those people who has the powers to make decisions on whether this company should make it for screening or not.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions I actually want to bring up just because we talked about percentages, if you don't mind. So
Mhm.
Mithan Jadhav is asking, does it need to have percentages? Are you expecting percentages for each bullet point?
No, not at all. But whenever we are calling out some sort of number, that's where I'm like expecting to see like what does that number mean in the whole scheme of things, right? Like here, I'm I'm not looking for a percentage at all. I'm just yeah, that's a statement that hey, I I did benchmark something. Um, so there I'm not looking for. But when there is a number, I'm hoping it's a relative term rather than an absolute term.
Gotcha. And yeah, so Jacob also mentioned want to quantify how your work impacted the project or company in a quantifiable manner. So I guess
Exactly.
one I get to expand on that. If you're quite junior, what are some of the tips and tricks of how to understand the larger impact of what your niche role is doing?
Perfect. I think that's a great question. So something that has excited me about some of the junior engineers is that fact that they are not just doing what it is told, but they go the extra step to kind of find out why does this work matter, right? You're not just doing what is told. You're like trying to understand, hey, what's the passion behind doing this? Why is the company trying to do this? And ask those questions to say product managers, bureau managers, and kind of like dig a little deeper, take a little more ownership to see, hey, why are we doing this work and why does it matter, right? At the end of the day, you should be like, hey, my work matters. So doing that sort of like extra bit of research obviously helps, and it paints a better picture also, right? Because that shows like your skill to suggest other things. Because if you know the roadmap of the reasoning of why the company is doing this, you could potentially suggest ideas uh, through hackathons and stuff like that to improve some of these metrics also. So I'm looking for that sort of like, you know, extra step that you would go to understand this a little more and then be able to convey that. I'm probably just it's probably my biases or something. I'm just probably thinking that that's that's why it makes a difference is that you're taking it a step more and understanding the real value behind it so that you can contribute even more value in the future.
That's very well put, spot on. I, and to echo off of Melby's point, you can't, even as a software engineer, one of the misconceptions are I can be a good software engineer in a silo. A lot of the times you can't work individual. It's very limited to what you can do, but when you work in a team you're able to draw out different insights from different perspectives. Product managers understand their users maybe a lot more than you would, so you're able to draw out, okay, well, the users are having you're lowering conversion rate because it's really hard to use this interface. So that's why you're sourced to help one of these challenges. So at least you understand the reasoning behind it, why you've been hired, why you're in that spot in that meeting room. Um, Having that perspective will give you the understanding of the percentages you're looking to quantify for projects, for companies. The other aspect I wanted to ask, let's say this person, let's say they're quite junior, and it's a project. Let's say it's a project, it's a school project, not an experience. So you can ask them, why are you doing this project? Because I need to get an A in the class. How would
Sorry,
you?
sorry, Michelle. I had a call coming in between, so I
Oh,
missed out the first part of your question. Sorry.
that's okay. I'll quickly repeat it. So,
Mhm.
for project work, how do you integrate project impact? I guess when you're going towards, so for example, in this resume in the bottom section, it
Mhm.
seems like these projects might be partnerships with Bank of America or individual case study analysis. How do you integrate like metrics in there?
Yeah, I think this is where I said that when it comes to some of these projects, I may not pay a ton of attention to it because it's like that's your first project that you did, right?
Yeah,
And it's probably not like an industry experience sort of thing. Like it's not an internship where,
yeah,
you are part of another team and you had some resources to go talk to, and it was a project, right? It's few folks coming in together to kind of solve a problem. Um, so that's where I'm a lot more lenient there. I'm just looking to see passion,
mm,
in the sense that, hey, what was the value addition that you were trying to see? So conducted accounting enterprise valuations for Bank of America and its competitors, computed and compared inflation rates, betas, all components of WSEC industry report. So it's a lot of like those. It leans towards like, hey, I have this finance acumen, and this seems to be something that excites me about. So this gives me a good sense that, you know what, even when they were kind of like in college or something, their projects were all aligned to what they were studying. I think that's sort of like a thing that I kind of see as a trend. But at the same time, it's like, hey, we have some free time. I did use it up. So if I see projects, it's great. It's because it shows the passion to be like, even when I was studying, I still had the passion to go do the extra bit to kind of uh, accelerate that studying process, learning process.
gotcha. Lovely. I know we've kind of jumped around this resume, unlike the previous resume. So I
Mhm.
guess let's talk about the experience as a whole. How do you feel about it as you're skimming through some of the experiences that this person has had? What is some of your takeaways and understanding of this person?
Absolutely. So this person seems to be in the working world a little longer than the last resume, at least. So I basically did this. So 5/20/20 all the way going to 6/20/21. So about a year's worth of experiences in there. I think that's a good amount of experience to kind of have, going into a job to say, hey, I'm not a zero experience person. I have some industry experience that I've kind of worked with. I think that looks great, even though one thing that I sort of kind of noticed was these two dates seem to be the same. It brings in a bit of a question to be like, hey, were you doing two jobs at the same time? Quite possible, right? Again, I wouldn't ding a person for that, but it's just questions that kind of playing in my head. Again, I think this resume just looks a lot more cleaner, like organized in a way that it's easily readable at the end of the day. Um, I would also be like, hey, let's pass this on to the next round, right? And get more eyes onto it. Let's get an interview kind of going for this person.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great. Moving on to the third resume. Oh, Mithan has a question again. For an
Mhm.
experienced manager resume, does it make sense to add individual contributor development that might have been done 5 years back as a developer, and focus more on people development skills?
Yes, absolutely. I think as you are in the engineering manager space side of things, talking about your team and how your team made a difference absolutely makes a lot of sense. So in that case, how you leveled up, how you turned around an engineer, how you leveled up your direct reportees, all that sort of stuff adds a value when you're an engineering manager going for another manager sort of role.
Yeah. Ooh, you talked about managing folks, I guess, who report to you. What about managing upwards? What is your experience with stakeholder management in front of your software engineers?
Yeah, I think upwards management is probably the least talked about subject in the engineering management world. It's all about like, hey, your current team, how did you succeed on your team? Upwards management is really important in the sense that the day-to-day details of what you know and what you're talking to with your team is not something that they're looking at, right? And this is probably why some of these metrics kind of matter to me also, is that upwards management is always about like metrics. What did we improve, right? What was it before? So even if we said that, hey, we just saved 20 plus hours, they'll be like, what does that mean with regards to what it was before? They're always looking at like metrics in that sense. So upwards management is a lot more abstraction of what we did in a way to say, hey, what was the impact that we caused for the company? Because to them, they're looking at it at the company level to say, hey, what did we save the company? So that's where the upwards management is a lot about like some of these
Oh.
metrics related data, percentages, is it going up or down, right? Um, I think that's what is a criteria. It's a good skill to develop. It doesn't come naturally. At least it did not come naturally to me. So it's a good skill to kind of develop early on, so that you're able to kind of communicate out. You're not communicating technical details, but you're communicating like layman terms as to what we do.
Hmm. Awesome. Thanks for the question, Mithen. Let's move on to the last resume, and feel free,
Cool,
guys, to add your questions throughout the live session. I'm happy to address it during any time during the interview.
cool. Uh, I think one thing that I quickly noticed was that there's a phone and an email address. I don't think there's a LinkedIn thingy. I highly
Mm.
recommend just adding a LinkedIn, not because I work there, but also I think it's a more user friendly, searchable sort of way to kind of get to your experience.
Just out of
Um,
curiosity, with the LinkedIn link, you have the resume in front of you. Do you click it immediately and skim through the resume and then go to a LinkedIn link, or do you just go to the LinkedIn link and see what they are doing?
that's a great question. So what I normally do is that, the first stop is like, hey, I'm going to do like this part,
Hmm.
skills. I'm going to read the first two work experience that you've had, and then be like, okay, let me go back, look at LinkedIn also to kind of validate, does that match up, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's my process, is that I go through the skills, I make sure that this person kind of fits my team, and then, or fits the skills that we're looking for on the team. And then quickly jump onto LinkedIn also to kind of validate and see, hey, what are some of the things? I think one of the things that I also, this is just me, I don't think anybody else does this, is that I also look at like recommendations under uh,
Oh.
LinkedIn to see what did other people say. It's not natural for people to kind of recommend people. It happens rarely, but if it happens, right, one or two recommendation that you have talks highly of the good work that you did. So I sometimes go look at like recommendations, and what did other people think about this person also. And sometimes even if it's just one recommendation, it talks volumes about this person at the end of the day. So I do that too, and that's
Ooh.
probably me.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like you stalk their activity. It's just what's on their profile. Does it match over? You've used it as validation. And then on the bottom section, there is a recommendation column that you do kind of take a look at. You skim
Yes,
through.
yes. And I think the thing also is that sometimes we say that resume should be just one page, right? It's
Yeah.
hard to squeeze in all the information into one page. And LinkedIn doesn't stop you that way. So when you go to LinkedIn, you will see a lot more detail sometimes out there. So it might be valuable to kind of go see there. I've also seen the other side of it where, they just had the experiences there, no descriptions and stuff. I spend a little more time kind of, beefing up what each of my experience essentially meant. Zillow, I was on the SEO team.
Hmm.
LinkedIn, I'm on the settings team. What am I building? What's about me and all that sort of stuff. Again, those are keywords that Google or some of these hiring platforms, LinkedIn itself is keying off of, and makes you pop up in search results more often, essentially.
Yeah.
Cool. So going through here, I think whenever I see education up on top, it almost feels very like a junior person, like they're fresh out of college. It is great to have PhD candidate. Again, I think it's brilliant to call out that because again, it's not a small feat to have a PhD. So I think it's worthwhile calling it out. Um, and one thing that I sort of kind of noticed with the PhD thing is that we talk about the PhD thing here and we also talk about the research experience. I don't know if they are the same, or because it's the same university in there, I wasn't sure if it's the same research that's being referenced on top, and also in a section that talks about the research experience. I don't know if it's the same thing or not. It might be duplicate information in that sense. Just a quick thought.
Mm-hmm.
This looks great. I think skills popping up on top is good.
Does it make
Python,
sense to put advanced next to
I
it?
agree. So I don't.
Okay.
So by that I mean, like, calling yourself advanced, what's the rating scale that you're going? Are you calling yourself advanced against what, right? Is it your perception that you're advanced? My perception could be, compared to me, you could be a Python expert and I could be a Python nobody, right? So is it that sort of comparison? How do you compare? Like, I think it's not fair to assess yourself on your skills. Let somebody else assess you, but don't undersell yourself by saying, "Oh, I'm an intermediate in C." Yeah, it's okay. You might be an advanced expert for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to C language. So I would say completely take that out. That's not a valid thing. I'm excited to see the skills part show up on top compared to the other two resumes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely don't quantify it by advanced or intermediate for sure. The machine learning libraries and stuff, PyTorch, OpenCV, NumPy. NumPy is my favorite thing. It's good. Frameworks, Jupyter, yeah, Git, SQL, sure.
Cool.
I sometimes have, so I've seen people do this where they're kind of calling it a software and framework. I've never understood what's the perfect title to put for some of these things. It's like, is this software and frameworks? Is that what Git is? Yeah, I don't know. So I've always impressed by seeing that, but I just put everything in one line, right?
Mm.
Programming languages, maybe machine learning libraries is a separate thing altogether, but other skills, you don't have to quantify everything with a heading if need be. Research experience, I think. Okay, interesting. So this person, okay, it is a 3-page resume, and they have kind of split out their experience into 3 sections: research experience, and industry experience, and teaching experience. One thing that comes off the top of my head is that, what are you trying to apply for, right? If you're looking for a research job, then just the research experience side and maybe the teaching experience might be just what's needed. Now here, it's like, are you looking for research jobs, or are you looking for an industry job, or are you looking for a teaching job? I think it throws off a bit. And you can tailor your resume for different applications that you're trying to do. You can have this as a master version and then copy sections of this into a different resume based on the job that you're applying for, I think. But I think, yeah, the research experience is great to have, but it has a little bit of duplication, I guess,
Yeah.
in both these areas.
Gotcha.
Talks in
Just,
details though.
I guess in terms of, let's say you have a format, research, industry, and I forget the last one,
Teaching.
teaching. Would you envision industry coming first, making it more relevant to you, even though it is, maybe let's say the last experience was in 2018 though? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think this is where my confusion was also, right? I'm not sure what this candidate is like applying for.
Mm-hmm.
Are they looking to get into an industry job, or are they trying to get a research job? If they're trying to get a research job, then obviously the research experience makes the most sense to put on top. But if you're looking for like an IT job or something, like a computer job, like my team specifically or something like that, right? Then you probably want the industry experience to show up first. That's
Makes
just
sense.
my thought.
Makes sense. Good.
Um, so that's where I was kind of lost on the research side of things. But overall, I think this explains a lot in detail about what we've kind of done, or what this person has kind of done there. No air pollutant data set to more accurately predict air pollution in high risk regions. This is where, compared to the last resume, yeah, some of these bullet points, when they wrap, it looks a little longer,
Mm-hmm.
because giving a little more insights is that sometimes we're looking at these resumes in a in a tight time crunch. So we have about 5 minutes or so to kind of go through one resume. So, having more words in there essentially means that I won't go through the whole thing, in
Yeah.
that time limit. And so that's why I'm kind of looking for like, hey, this one was perfect, right? It's like it's all one line bullet points sort of thing. Da, 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 done. This one's a little more like wordy in that sense. I'll have to read through it, and I'll probably not even get to some of the more interesting stuff that you may have at the bottom, right?
Mm.
So that's something to kind of watch out for on this one. But they have done a lot of work for sure. Okay, research assistant.
Zig is asking if there's a format that you recognize. What is kind of your typical comfortable go-to type of format? I think you've touched upon it, but just to reiterate it for the folks who just joined.
Yeah, I think this is my, like, I see this as like, a good starting point, right? Even if you take out some of the margin space, which is what I have done on my resume too, as you grow more experience, like, you're
Yeah.
like, how do I fit it all into one page? Geez. And just take out the margin spaces. I've done this also. So I think this one seems like the right format in that sense that it, sticks to one page. This one's a little longer in that sense that I will not get to some of the more interesting details if it's a little longer in that sense. Because like I said, your resume is getting the foot inside the door, but at the same time sometimes the funnel's really wide at the resume level,
Yeah.
and the interviews is where it gets a little more stringent. But getting an interview, I I don't think you have to write down all the details. You will have a lot of time to talk about it. So put in the most valuable things that you want to showcase as what
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of done, and you might just be okay with it. Like here, if you just said a higher resolution vision-based air quality data set, that's good enough for me to kind of say, yeah, that sounds cool, right? You want to pique their interest, but not give away all the details, right? You want to keep them excited. I want to talk to this person to know what that means, right? That's enough to kind of pique my interest. And you can talk about all these things in the interview itself. So that's my take on these 2 points, essentially, is that,
I
that
think
will pique my interest.
Gotcha, gotcha. And that's not to say all your experience should only have the title in it.
Right.
I think it's I think the perspective is it's duplicated from the PhD. If you look under education, it seems to
Mhm.
be duplicated. The other part is that it might not be as relevant for Melby as well because he's really looking for industry experience when you have constraints in the real world setting, when you're looking at time savings, money savings, efficiencies. But that's more of a comment I wanted to make and qualifying comment.
Yeah. Yeah, good point there. So, after the first one, I'm like, some of these are like
Yeah.
more research level stuff. So I'm going to be like, hey, I want to look at the industry experience. So this is where I'll probably skip through a couple of the other experience that you had there and go directly to that industry experience side of things. A suite of wireless sensor platforms in C++ to track their own positions, orientation via Wi-Fi. Yeah, I think that looks good. Android user interface. So this seems like they have some Android experience also in here. Test methods to evaluate performance of sensor platforms using motion capture systems. I think this is good. This piques an interest. And then Texas Instruments, also CPU optimization, optimizing math library functions in C through software pipelining. Techniques by more than 10%, compiler optimization techniques by more than, okay, cool. Reduce the count cycle. Nice. Again, some of these big names also is a good thing to have. All right, I think. Cool. And then they talk about some bit of teaching experience in there. So one recommendation, so this person has a lot of skills, right?
Yeah.
I think one recommendation that I would try to give this person would be that try to squeeze this all into a one-page resume as much as possible with taking out some of the extra details of it. You want to pique people's interest. And one recommendation that I would probably have for this sort of resume where there's a lot of information, there's honors and awards, there's presentation, teaching skills, professional organizations that you're part of, your research project, is I have seen resumes which is kind of like organized kind of like a web page essentially. So there's like a left section or a margin that talks about like honors and awards, certifications that I've gotten, technical skills I have. And then the right hand side, there's like a section that talks about like research experience, teaching experience, da. So you're utilizing more of the space, but not in like, you know, in one straight line, but you're kind of like sectionifying your resume into 4 or 5 different sections, and kind of, you know, playing around with font sizes for each
Yeah.
of the honors and awards. Can be a smaller font and it can fit into the left margin, right? And calling out some of those things separated out, and calling out the bigger things that you want to highlight, like industry experience in bigger font. So it's all there in one page, but it's like a web page essentially. There's
Hmm.
like all these different things in there. I think that's a recommendation that I will have for this person. I think they have a lot of skills, but it needs to be a little more focused on what you're trying to accomplish. But if you still want to keep it all in one place, that sort of a resume format might help this person.
That's great. Thanks for outlining the recommendations for this one. What is your overall perspective of this candidate in general, in terms of his or her candidacy?
I think I think they have done a lot of work, right? Like
Yeah.
just the PhD side of things and all that. I would, again, like I would say yay to this person also, because of the amount of skills that this person is going to showcase on their resume.
Hmm.
But obviously there will be a lot of like um, follow-up questions that'll pop out of some of these things as you read. The more details you give, the more questions you invite in the interviews and stuff. So, but again, I will be saying yes. Let's get this person in an interview. Overall, I would say of the 3 resumes, like the first impression, the second one was probably like, hey, easy to read, and I think I got all the information that I needed really quickly. And then I would say this one per se. Just for the amount of skills that they seem to have. Like when I look at like a PhD candidate and stuff, it's like they did, you know, above and beyond a little bit more to kind of
Mm.
get a doctorate in their area. For that reason, I'd be like, hey, I want to get this candidate also a chance to kind of come talk to us. And then um, lastly, coming to here, the only reason why I kind of stacked this person at the end is just because of like the experience level side of things, right? Compared to the other candidates, I'm like, hey, this seems a little more juniorish,
Mm.
but like counting the number of years of experience, it's like, yeah, about 6, less than a year, right? So in that sense, I'd be like, yeah, let's put this person uh, third in the list. But again, if they could kind of showcase a little more of, like I said, percentage numbers, what value did we bring to the company sort of thing in a little more interesting way, and keeping all these bullet points to just one line sort of thing, just making it a little more cleaner, would probably get them a little more like, make it a little more easier to get their foot in.
Gotcha. I think the main thing that's so this one, it seems like they worked in 2018 and then again in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in terms of that, it seems like the number of years is one of the determining factors. The other aspect is quantifying it. So my question is, the second resume didn't have as much quantifiable metrics. How does that differ from the first one? Is it just the differences of the number of experiences you were looking for?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. So this is definitely like, hey, you know, it's a year's worth of experience that this person's had.
Yeah.
And then, you know, some of this, like I said, maybe to a financial planning person, this may not be a great, I don't know. I'm
Hmm.
just purely going off like, hey, looking at the number of years, this seems like 1 year seems like a solid amount of experience, right? At least for a junior engineer to kind of come and join us if this was an engineer. But it's like 1 year seems to have, yeah, they have some good um, experience under their belt in here. And they seem to be able to kind of showcase that in a clean way.
Gotcha. Cool. So I've asked you to yay or nay each individual resume, but before I ask you to do that concretely, Maria's asking a question of what can a career changer or student looking for that first job do to stand out as a junior engineer, especially when work experience is not relevant and most projects are boot camp or school related? How can they stand out? If
Yeah, I think if you have a strong, so if you're a bootcamp software engineer candidate, I would say having a good, strong GitHub repo with like a lot of projects, I think that's something that you can make yourself stand out. I have seen um, boot camp candidates talk about the projects that they have done, but showcasing it as like, hey, I built a library for Microsoft. I built something that integrated with GitHub that made it easier for people to. It's an open source library that I built. There are things like that that you can showcase to say, hey, I did more than just the courseware that
Mm.
was in there. I think that's what would make a bootcamp person kind of stand out, is that taking it outside of the bootcamp and kind of doing some apps. Maybe you develop an Android app. Maybe you develop like a integration with GitHub or something. Maybe you created an open source library out there that everybody's using. Those are the things that will make it stand out,
So
if
it
you ask
doesn't
me.
have to be part of a company. It could be their own side projects that they're,
Open source, perfect
yeah,
thing to do.
gotcha. Um, is that necessary in, so you mentioned GitHub, so you added onto GitHub. Is it something that you want to call out on a resume? Where these
Yes,
are the open source apps that I've developed. Da 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 da.
I
Ooh.
would think so. Absolutely. So I've seen people kind of put out projects here. So somebody who's a fresher, right, looking for a job, like these projects, right?
Hmm.
These could be projects that you could have a GitHub link here that I would
Ooh.
totally click on. I'm a person who I see a link, I click it. Just kidding. Uh, but definitely call out some of those things and say, hey, what was the impact? Again, calling out the impact to say, hey, we've had 10,000 people download this and stuff like that is great, right? It's a top trending app in 2021 or in this month or in this quarter on App Store. All that sort of stuff is some way that you can increase the impact of the project.
Gotcha. Awesome. I know we have a couple minutes left from this session. Typically, most of our sessions have trickled to the 5:15 mark. So
Sure.
I do want to ask you for the last activity of yay or nay for each of the three resumes. I know in the perspective, let me caveat, in the perspective of would you do something next to it? I know you're not hiring for junior engineers, but
Mhm.
if you were, if there was a position open, would you see a next step at this current stage?
So given the experience, I would say it probably be kind of like, hey, let this person get a little more experience for the first resume.
Mm-hmm.
That's my gut feeling that kind of comes in. Even though I said, yeah, I will make this. So if somebody is looking for like, hey, I need somebody who's got 6 months of experience, or I need somebody to kind of get a team kind of going, I'd be like, yay, get this person. I
Yeah.
think it's okay. Uh, Again, it's up to the interviews for them to kind of assess your tech skills and all that sort of stuff. I would have said yay to that, but given that they're kind of like a little more fresher, I would say, yeah, get the experience through Disclosed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have that kind of going for a year, and then let's kind of move forward. That's just my first take on it.
Cool.
Second one, again, I'm not a financial person, but I think this overall looks good. I would totally be like, hey, this resume looks clean. Let's go for the next round. Let's see what happens. So if I had an opening in LinkedIn and that was looking for a financial planner or somebody like that, I'd be like, yeah, this sounds legit. Let's forward this over.
Awesome.
This one again, it would be a yay from me. Again, it's this person has a lot of experience, like be it research wise or like the industry experience sort of side of things and all that sort of like it seems to be credible, and also from like some of the bigger companies also. So this makes me feel comfortable to kind of move it across. But again, like just purely resume feedback level, I'm like, hey, let's just organize this a little more cleaner. But other than that, I will say yay to this one too.
Gotcha. So it's not a make or break at this point. It's just for future references. If you want to make it cleaner, this is how you should do it. But as of now, I think you have a lot of the skills I want to pick at.
Exactly.
Awesome. Um, I see that we've answered most of the questions. If I
Mhm.
haven't answered your questions for folks on the chat, can you just copy and paste them onto the bottom such that I can see them now? So I've actually prepared several questions for you, Melby, but
Oh
what
no.
I I know I actually have, oh my
Okay.
gosh, 8 questions for you, and clearly we're not going to go through all 8 of them. So,
No
folks, if
worries.
you want to stick in, we're gonna ask pretty heavy questions to Melby. Um, one question. So I actually have 2 questions that I want to ask you. What are the top three reasons you've rejected resumes? Or let's resumes and then furthermore candidates.
Sure. Um, I would start with the resume side of things.
Yeah.
The top three, I would probably say one being skills. By skills, I mean, like I said, for an engineer, you could be a web engineer versus a machine learning engineer versus a mobile engineer. So if you're applying for like an Android job and you've clearly not done Android work ever, it might be a reject for me because I'm looking for somebody who's got that Android experience. Um, Compared to if you had Java experience versus C sharp, I'd be like, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
That's an easily learnable thing. You know how web frameworks work. That's not a problem. But that's one thing that I kind of see that has been a reason for rejection is that it's not the right fit. You're a mobile engineer versus we're looking for a web engineer.
Mm.
Um, so that's one top reason that I can kind of think of. The second thing I can kind of think of is that could be years of experience, I would say. Um, by that, I mean, we have a lot of um, folks who are essentially like software engineers, junior engineers, like 1 year of experience, but they apply for like a senior engineer role. I think there's a higher chance of you not, getting past to the next level just because we're looking for at least 4 years. Like 4+ years is what most of the tech industry considers as like senior engineer. 5 is like ideal. 5+ is perfect. Then you're like a senior engineer. I think 1 year doesn't give you that amount of like experience to kind of be a senior engineer. So sometimes it's like some people just call themselves senior when they're probably not there. It might be a better option for you to apply for a software engineer role, like a junior engineer or software engineer role, and still get through. But years of experience not matching with what we are hoping to see is one other reason, the title mismatch. Um, third third reason, I don't think I have a third reason. I think there are just two reasons that I can think of.
You mentioned Jacob mentioned he's guessing if they don't have a LinkedIn, would you automatically reject them?
No, no, not at all. Never. No, that never happens. The LinkedIn is a plus one. It's never like, oh, you don't have a LinkedIn, oh, you don't have a GitHub. None of that stuff happens. Yeah, never.
Gotcha. Awesome. Um, that's the second question I have is what is the top misconception of a software engineering manager and how do you want to address it?
I think the top misconception about software engineering manager is that the best individual contributors become a manager. I think that is the biggest like misconception that people have, is that sometimes you're like, hey, I'm really good as like a senior software engineer. I'm perfect for a manager. Um, or naturally, the best software engineer just turns out to be a engineering manager. I don't think that's true. At the end of the day, you could be like a mediocre sort of a software engineer and still become like a great engineering manager because the management side of things is a lot of people skills, and it's there is no algorithm for people, as I always say. So it's hard to kind of understand um, how to manage people, and what you do with like algorithms and software is not how people sort of work, and you're always being sometimes I feel like I'm using my acting skills because based on a situation that a person or an engineer is in, I'm a different manager for them. So I could be like a hands-off manager. Sometimes I'm a all hands-in manager. So I'm a different person for different people. So I think that was something that I also learned the hard way, that the first year that I was a software engineering manager was my worst because I was like, I'm not doing my job well. Why am I not doing well? I was a great IC. How am I not doing this well? I think it's a totally different skill. So if you could be a great individual contributor, but when you start off as a manager, you're starting off at zero. Just knowing that would be great.
Awesome. That's a really great learning for folks who want to go into the management route and they are currently an individual contributor, is that you don't have to be the best individual contributor to be recognized as a good manager. Um, I actually have a lot more questions, but conscious of folks' time, I know some folks are calling internationally as well, and I know it's getting really late or really early for you guys. So what I'll do for the resumes that have been submitted, you are guaranteed a one-on-one with Melby. And for folks who have joined the call, um, just make sure you post your favorite quote from the session. Tag me, tag Melby, and tag Disclose so we can actually see that you've posted a quote. And we're going to randomly select one person to meet with Melby. Any last words for the viewers today?
I would say one thing that really makes a difference. I know that people who are
Yeah.
looking for a job normally goes and cold applies to a lot of jobs. I would say your best way to kind of, you know, get an interview is like looking for referrals. So as much as possible, look for referrals. The reason why I say that also is because, you know, company of like Google scale or LinkedIn scale, any company for that matter, it doesn't even have to be big, right? You would have a lot of people cold applying. It's humanly almost impossible to go through all those cold applied, you know, resumes because there'll be thousands, right, of applications kind of coming in. So when you see a role that interests you, you know, you can use LinkedIn maybe or whatever to go find out is somebody working in that company, right? You can look at that company page and you'll see, hey, your friends or people you're connected to in LinkedIn who are working that same company. It's a good way to ask them to refer you because if you're referred, uh, the feedback loop is that the recruiter has to come back to who referred you and say, hey, we looked at it, this person did not pass. So you're guaranteed at least somebody looking at your resume if you go through referrals as much as possible rather than cold applying. I think that's my biggest advice for anybody looking for a job is that try to find referrals. And Michelle and I connected just by she cold emailing me or LinkedIn mailing me, asking, "Hey, would you be interested in talking about this?" And you know, this happened. So it's absolutely fine for you to find somebody who works in that company and say, "Hey, you know, can I use you to refer me in this job?" They'll be absolutely fine. They'll look
What
at your
if
resume
you
and
what if
they
you
feel
don't know
comfortable.
the person and someone cold outreached you? Can you refer me? What do you feel about that?
So I'll look at the resume for sure, right?
Yeah.
I'll try to see if this person is connected to somebody else in my network. Um, and I might be okay if the resume seems strong. And I will be putting a note in my referral also to say that, hey, this person had reached out to me. I don't know this person personally, but they had reached out to me. You would still be guaranteed that somebody will look at your resume at the end of the day. So I do that. Not everybody does that. Some people might get annoyed also. I don't know. But it's worth a try, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. I know we met with someone from Amazon previously at Disclose, and he was like, "No, I never do referrals because I don't know the person, and it's a reflection off of me." It's very different per person, but for folks who want to go into LinkedIn, there's something that you're interested in, use Melby as a resource for folks who've joined in the call. By the way, feel free to connect with me or Melby after the call and just put a note, hey, I loved your session, or no, I hated your session. This is how you need to improve.
Absolutely.
Just be sure to connect with us because we're here to help you guys through the whole job hunting process. I know it could be very arduous for job seekers. Cool. Thanks for the tidbit on referrals. You're open to folks connecting with you after the session? Seems
Yeah,
like?
totally.
Okay,
Happily.
awesome. Well, thank you guys. I know there's a couple of you left straggling. So we're going to close the call. If there's any further questions, post on LinkedIn and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. All right.
Well,
Take care, guys.
thank you all. Bye, Michelle.
Bye. So, folks who are in the call still, Melby just dropped off, but I wanted to give you a heads up for next week's session. It's How did you guys find the session with Melby, by the way? Did you find it helpful, not helpful, especially if you didn't have your resumes reviewed? The other question, sorry, not question, the other thing I wanted to tell you guys is next week we have someone from Microsoft. It's going to be a bit different. We're not going to go through resumes. We're actually going to go through interviews. So it's we're writing out the transcript right now, but essentially you'll see snippets of real interview answers and the questions that were asked, some of the expectations around the interviews. So we're really excited to host next week's session. I'm really excited to hear your quotes. Feel free to message and connect with me and Melby and follow Disclosed. All right. Take care, guys. And I see your questions. If there's something that I didn't answer, just ping me on LinkedIn and I'll try to get the answer for you, either privately or through a post. All right. Have a great weekend, guys, and I'll see you guys next week.